So glad that you're all with us. We're here as we kind of wrap up our third and final book club call with A Just Mission by Mekdes Hadis. And we're just kind of talking about some reflections, some overall reflections from the book so far, things that we have, just kind of things that have risen to the surface for us. And so we're going to spend the night kind of deeper into some questions specifically in the chapters, but if I can quickly recap our conversation so far before we started recording, it is that, there are some deep parts of our hearts that are kind of wrestling with the reality of someone else's experience being different than our own, and even our own best intentions and our own, hearts of service have been challenged by the words in this book and in our just wrestling through the reality of our faith circles that we're in, and how we continue to be true to ourselves and be true to our learning and be true to the allies around us, the people that we seek to be allies with. And so I'm already just really encouraged by everyone's vulnerability and willingness to share. I'm curious as we kind of go through some of these chapters tonight, and we may not make it through the depths of all of them, but there was a quote even just in the beginning of chapter 5 that I wanted to go back to as we kind of started this conversation last week. But Mekta says on page 91, she says, to force our goodness on people while they are telling us what they need is the ultimate act of self-service. And I come back to this quote often. It's the ultimate act of self-service. And gosh, what a way that it's probably the hardest thing to hold people accountable to, maybe in the church or in faith circles, because of the way that how do you tell someone that they're self-righteous? Does anybody have I haven't had any success with that. I haven't had any success receiving that. Will. Is there any way of accountability when it comes to that? Can you navigate through that with someone? It's pretty easy to tell them if they're, I don't know, if you found out that that they're cheating on their spouse or that they're embezzling funds from somewhere, it's a little bit easier of a call out. But how do you walk together faithfully with other people in self-righteousness?
It's kind of a similar conversation, not necessarily how to call people out on self-righteousness, but how do we invite people into what we're doing without calling out the bad? And something that my mom said that has really stuck with me is sometimes you don't necessarily have to call out the bad. You just model what the good is and what truth is, what you believe, and showing people in that way, hoping that they'll catch on. Some people never will, but I don't know. I think again, Enneagram 1, like I want to make the world right and I want to tell everyone that. So I often kind of stumble when I'm doing that because I don't want to criticize all the time. I criticize myself all the time. There's just always kind of that critical thinking, but yeah, it's really changed my perspective to think, how am I modeling this instead of criticizing everyone else?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And kind of creating that environment for discovery, right? Almost facilitating that discovery for folks rather than, I mean, because you can't stand in front of a classroom and tell people that they're dumb or that they just don't get it, right? Like you have to guide as a true facilitator of education. You have to guide people through that discovery process themselves. And I think that's so true, Morgan. Create the most ripe environment for learning. Anybody else have thoughts on that? I'd say some of that does come back to policies. And at the end of chapter 5, McDis kind of goes through some good practices. This is on page 112 and 113, but some good practices and some steps that she, recommends taking. I know with seed and trips that we have facilitated in the past, we have a list of guidelines that we actually require all of our short-term volunteers to sign. Or we did this with Kindred Exchange, Morgan. I'm not sure if that happened on the last seed trip because I wasn't there, but there were some policies that we wrote just to try to help offer some guidelines to folks, and just said, look, we're not trying to be jerks, but it was almost like if we could be the bad cop in the beginning, then it gave people the freedom to explore and kind of created an environment where the natural temptations for someone on a very first trip to East Africa or on a very first trip, to experience a culture very different than their own, was we don't take pictures at all for the first 5 days that you're here, or until the last 2 days that you're here. So that, I'm just thinking about, that was one policy that we required everyone to sign from a photography standpoint. No cameras are out until the last 2 days. And so you're just taking in the experience. You're just building relationships with folks. You're not asking for a picture with someone that you don't have a relationship with, or pointing a camera in someone's face, or, out of the window of a car, so that, it, it feels exploitative to other people. Are there other policies that you feel would be helpful, or things that maybe you've practiced, or things that you would recommend, or things that you've done in the past that you're like, I would just, this was my natural inclination and I did it and I didn't like it. And I felt weird about it. And so afterwards I just thought, man, I wish someone had kind of put up some guardrails for me.
I thought the
I don't know.
points, go ahead. No. Um, One, if you feel like you want to learn or go serve a certain population overseas, look for that right in your own backyard first. And if you can't engage in that, then why are you going overseas? So I thought that really rose the bar to challenge yourself to examine. So why do I feel that God wants me to do this? Let me look for opportunities here. But then on the other side, it was if to go visit a country, you know, go as a tourist, go where you're just kind of like what we did when we were taking the tour through parts of the United States to learn things. Then you're there as a tourist. You might feel a little silly, but there's no pretense about why you're there, and you're certainly, engaging and learning, but in a different capacity. So those are two things that stood out to me.
So good. Absolutely. That's great. Sherry, what would you add to that?
Well, I don't know that it's adding, but I just was gonna, true confession, about 10 years ago, we were on a cruise, our whole family, my parents and siblings and their family, and my husband had made arrangements at one of the stops for us to help at an orphanage and paint the walls and do all the things, so in my mind, like, after getting to know Abby and going through Kindred Exchange and reading the book, you just, a part of you's like, yeah. And we were immediately like, oh, let's take a picture of us doing it. I mean, just it's just part of how we grew up, was you just, you're the, and just looking back, and it's like, here we were on this cruise ship, which I'm sure was totally annoying to the locals, and they probably didn't really need us to pay, I mean, it just, all this stuff is starting to really open my eyes to the way I have lived. And so it's, I'm glad my eyes are open now, and I'm thankful for those experiences. But yeah, just once, what is it, when you know better, you do better. So that's my learning tip.
Thank you for being willing to share that. Honestly, that takes so much courage to be able to look back and to speak into words things that, I picked up a gourd today. I was taking someone through my house, and I was kind of showing them some things, and I was like, yes, and I got this gourd in Masai Mara, Kenya, and I lived in a tent for 6 weeks. And I was like, and I also threw a village chief, a Maasai village chief, off the back of a motorcycle that I never should have been driving him on, and like just like I think back to these embarrassing moments where I remember him calling me this crazy Mzungu woman, and I was like, yes, I know, I don't know why I'm here. Why am I like infiltrating your village? There were moments that I look back to and have just sometimes nightmares of things that I did, or place how close I put my DSL camera lens in someone's face, for a picture that I could come back and tell a story about, and assumptions that I made about people. There was a blog post that I wrote about this child covered in flies in one of the villages in the Mara, and about what his life would, how different his life would look if he was my child in America, and how cute he would look. And I think I literally wrote in this blog in my early 20s, like how cute he would look in clothes from Baby Gap. I mean, like, I want to throw up at sometimes reading my own words. It's so incredibly humbling. And I think that is just that. Well, here it is. Another quote that I'll pull out, but it's when she says that Jesus makes the point, you will always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me. And it's evident that he was not after the eradication of material poverty. He was after the eradication of spiritual poverty. And so, what it looks like for us to walk through that journey truly with real courage is incredibly humbling. And wow. Thank you, Sherry, for modeling that humility so well. I've moved us into chapter, I think this is chapter 6. Am I in chapter 7 already? I think chapter 6. And it was a doozy about money and our sacred cow. What did you underline in this chapter, or what kind of rose to the surface for you, and thinking about the ways that our faith and our religion has been intertwined with different financial values, money values?
Well, I just really appreciated her description of the internship she did at McLean Bible. So having lived in Northern Virginia, I'm like, oh, I knew exactly everything she was talking about. But when she described how she felt when she got off of the metro and was wondering, wait a minute, if this is here in America, why are we sending people overseas? Why is this hidden? And to hear the way she described that, just, I guess, challenged me that, oh, yeah, that is true. I know, but I never thought of it that intensely maybe before, because we're just used to knowing that we have pockets of, different economic groups in this, city planning with redlining and things like that. And I knew it as a concept, but not as a reality. So her example, I thought, was extremely helpful.
Sarah, what do you think are the risks, as we practice our quote unquote, M work like this? What are the risks if we do that in our own backyard?
Well, I think the danger of looking like the white savior can happen in your own backyard the same as it can overseas. So I think not to fool ourselves to think that, well, just because we've only gone 15 minutes from our house, we're immediately going to be accepted. But also, I think, putting yourself on the same, I don't want to say same playing field, but the economics aren't the same. But yet, as people, we are this. So, um, I don't know. I think there's very similar risk that you would face overseas as well. And I think it was in one of the podcast made for the church coming out of the last book discussion. Basically talked about the time it takes to develop a relationship anywhere, of just going and sitting in a community for years, like hanging out at a coffee shop, to get to know people, to gain the right to go in the next step, because it's not so much that you're there thinking you're going to make a friendship in 5 hours. Could be 5 weeks, could be 5 months, and what does that look like on a practical scale? I think this video even said, wow, if that's your full-time mission statement, you have to have some really patient and understanding supporters. People that are willing to stand behind that as well. And then the personal sacrifice of your time and everything, and not knowing if that's going to be the right place or not. So yeah, those were thoughts that came to my mind.
Yeah. And sometimes when we do engage cross-culturally because of our social location, because of the color of our skin, because of the privilege that we come from financially, there is a faster track to engagement, and it can look more effective in the short term, but it doesn't mean that it's deeper, right? It doesn't mean that it's lasting. It doesn't mean that it's sustainable. And so sometimes I think that can throw off the idea that foreign work is so much more effective than what we can do here. It's a great investment, XYZ. But I remember, I don't know if I've said this in this group or not, but when we were preparing to go abroad, we wrote into our commitment with our sending congregation and our supporting congregation that if any of the leaders there wanted to call my husband and I and ask how many people we were engaging successfully abroad, then we had the right to turn around and ask them how many people they were also engaging successfully back at home in Middle Tennessee. And that really honestly leveled the playing field for us so much that they didn't ask us for about 5 years until they got really financially stressed and knew that they couldn't continue to support us at the level that they had been. And then that's when the questions started coming out. But I do think that allowed us to have a more mutual understanding of it doesn't matter where we are in the world. Our call is to be people of peace everywhere, right? In every community. But the risk to doing that close to home sometimes is different than doing that in a short-term relationship with someone, right? You're going to have to remember that person's name. You're going to keep seeing them on the street. You're going to keep engaging a traumatic history of some kind, or you're going to keep having to push a little bit on theology that may make you study a little bit more or may question the theological foundation that you had. So those are much more I would say much different, much more in your face challenges than doing it in a short-term experience abroad. What else from this chapter?
I was just, man, she did not pull any punches on this one. And I feel like she is bold in only the way she can be bold sometimes, and she just said, but I really appreciated just her calling out, like even those that like those of us in the Western church, of the how we have to have some kind of return for our giving. Like there's this transactional approach to giving. And like even though, and I've had supporters now with me for 14 years, and they've committed to kind of what you were just saying, like the long haul of like, oh, we really get to know and are in the like building relationships and taking our time, and like and to this point, like I've seen people, like I've walked through their parents passing away and like births and weddings and like all of these things. And it's such an honor to be able to do that. But I know there's a lot of people that when they give, it's like they need to see kind of like that idea of like, well, okay, well, how many people have accepted, how many people have come in? or that idea, and she just talked about like getting like the tax break. And you know, of course, like we're coming to the end of the year, and it's like the year-end donations for a lot of companies, and it's not always, I'm not saying that that's always a bad thing, but just that idea of like, it's very transactional the way we give, and we have to have something in return for, and so I'm really appreciated her calling that out. And we have a similar thing here that the local women do, where they put all their money in a pot, and then every month they switch who can take the money. She kind of explained that in that chapter. And I just think I love it because they found a way to help each other, and lift each other up, in such a beautiful way that isn't like demoralizing or, you know, demeaning. And I think sometimes even us, and when we come in, the way we give does, it just puts us in that hierarchy. So yeah, I really liked this chapter. And I mean, even I was challenged. I've been listening. I couldn't get a hard copy of the book, so it has been a little harder, because I've been listening to, I've been trying to write notes as I've been doing stuff, but I can't remember everything. But yeah, it was challenging, and appreciated her candidness in it.
It's so good. That's so good. I love that. Mm. And money is always a challenge, and we wrestle with this at Seed. We wrestle with this in our daily walk here locally. We wrestle with this with. I mean, last week you know, my husband and I to where you are, Elizabeth, and we're committed to their kids' education, and continue to be, because I've, you know, and I know the struggle that it is to feel like you owe something so great to someone that you can't pay back. And in much of the global South, that is true, right? There's this feeling of reciprocity that you can't. I will cut you off relationally if I start to feel like I cannot repay you and keep you in you know, and stay equal with you. And if I can't stay equal with you, then I must honor you and worship you and call you all of the wonderful names. And so that can be really challenging with relationships. So one thing that I learned through those navigating those awkward money conversations and the values of different cultures was trying to figure out a way to honor the person that I was partnering with and who they were. And I'm sure I didn't think about it last week, I guess, because it's just become such a practice, but it always still it still sits with me. It's still uncomfortable for me when I'm sending a MoneyGram or I'm, you know, sending things over. But I just told, you know, my friend, I said, listen, you sacrificed everything for your family when you lost your parents. And there were 4 girls and she was the oldest, and she sacrificed everything to make sure that her youngest sibling could stay in school. And I said, I want to honor that sacrifice that you made for your sister, because your kids deserve, you know, every chance at an education. And I know that I'm just on, I am supporting this and honoring what you did, you know, for your sister. And honor is such a powerful tool in connecting with people as humans, but she truly is a hero for me. But that doesn't, the awkwardness is still there, right? The power differential when it comes to finances is still really, it's still very much there. Bev, Morgan, I know you guys have dealt with this a lot as well, and in leading Seed, what have you learned in this? What's something that you might reflect on?
Yeah, I think we've had conversations around this topic a lot because, of course, we deal with money and finances and things like that. And I think something that's just like kind of really been a theme, I guess, this year as we've talked about it, is the relationship part makes things messy. So I think sometimes we want there to be a policy that we stick to, or there's like certain rules about how to engage with people or how to have, like, you know, we don't give money directly, or, you know, just these things that we want to establish. But when you're in relationship with people, it's not always black and white, and there's not always a policy that you can put around something. And with people who are your friends, it's a different kind of like, you know, we don't do handouts or whatever, but if your friend's daughter has to pay for her exams, and you know, that's an immediate need, but it's for education. So there's there's just conversations that are always great. It's always messy. And I think, again, going back to my earlier point of just constantly learning and never having it figured out and being okay with that. And just, I think you have to rely on the Lord so much and just the discernment in the day to day of what does it look like to love this person today. And sometimes it is to be generous with our finances. Sometimes it's to say no. Sometimes it's to, you know, lead them somewhere else or provide a resource or something like that. But I think if I think I've figured it out or there's a policy about it, then I'm relying on my own thoughts and my own power. But it truly requires me to be dependent on the Lord in every conversation and every relationship that we have. And that's something that I don't necessarily want to do all the time. So it's a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah. So tricky. And I appreciate, I appreciate you saying that the policies are great and they're great guardrails, but also relationships break down every policy because people are so dynamic and we are all still human. Um, in the last few minutes, I know we didn't get through all the chapters, but the last few chapters really did offer us a way back to reconciliation, to that restorative justice that she speaks about, to the ways that the future will look different as we have these conversations. And so I'm curious, what is something that you're hoping that you have already changed in your practices, or the way, something that you want to take back to your community, to your friends, to your faith community, whatnot, that um, you're just forever sold on now, right? It's like you've seen it and you can't go back, and you're newly and freshly committed to restorative justice in some way. What is that for each of you? Other than giving all of your money to seed internet. I'm just kidding. I have to say that I'm a board member. Yeah, there you go, Morgan. You can pay us to do it for you if you don't want to do it yourself. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I think,
Well, oh, go ahead. I think I'm still at the point of asking myself those same questions. Okay, so what to do? Without being critical of things that are already going on. So, I mean, I found myself going, I knew it, those short-term missions were bad. Yeah. And it's like, well, wait a minute, that's not really helpful. What can we do? Be more positive. Well, like what Morgan was saying, model the positive. Don't just, criticize. But definitely looking at things that are happening. Uh, the challenge to just become more aware of things. But yeah, I think I'm still personally asking myself those questions.
And that's powerful in and of itself, is just to be willing to ask yourself the questions. Elizabeth, what would you say?
yeah, I agree with you, Sarah. It's like just continually, like, and like what Morgan said about we're just always being willing to be the learner and to listen to the other voices and the other experiences and the other testimonies, and not just write them off because we don't understand them or that they're different than ours. And I mean, I'm actually currently just in a very discouraging place in the city world, the Christian world, and the mission world that I'm in right now. And I've felt pretty hopeless. And in like I just shared earlier about, I just feel like I see more doubling down of like the old ways, and it just breaks my heart because I like my heart has never really changed for the people, but I do see a better way now. And I'm sure I have stories, again, like it's the morning, so my brain is functioning of like so many things that I did wrong. And I probably still do. But I think just continuing to elevate these voices where we can in these spaces. And I think for me, I've quickly realized that in the realm that I'm in now, in the circles I'm in now, they don't want those voices necessarily elevated. And so like I've had to make the decision for myself to just get out of that space, because it has been very discouraging and kind of suffocating. And I've just, yeah, just learning, I think, yeah, like you were saying, Sarah, just being willing to continuing to listen and grow in these areas and ask ourselves the questions is so important. Because even though like I feel like I have grown quite a bit, it's like I know there's so much more, I have so much further to go. So yeah.
Great. Thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks for being willing to tug on those threads. Sherry, what else would you like to share about your journey before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, kind of just repeat, like, just my eyes have been opened. And so, yeah, just being sensitive to people that are in my path, and, you know, just even with our church and we have one Saturday a month that we serve, so we all put on our t-shirts and we go and we serve, and I'm like, yeah, but there's 29 other days of the month. And so, yeah, I think it's been good to just kind of switch my brain a little bit. And so I'm very thankful.
That's good. It's so great. I love that. Well, I'll speak on behalf of Morgan and Beverly and the rest of the board at Seed, and just say that if, there are ways that to continue this conversation. If there are things that you think, man, my community would be really great, or really positively engaged through this, but I don't really have the support or the mechanism to do that. Morgan, I'm volunteering her. She's a new mom, but I know that she would love for you to reach out and just have a call to just think through that. We're a young and very agile organization. So Elizabeth, as you make your way back across the ocean, if that's the plan, please call us, engage us. I'm happy to walk through that journey with you and think through what it looks like to take everything that you've learned and continue to have a positive impact on this space. Because as you start to remove the Jenga blocks of the ways that things have always been done, it can feel really, really unstable. And it can feel like you're looking at a pile of bricks that means nothing, right? And that can feel incredibly demoralizing and incredibly sad. And there's a grieving process of letting go of what has always felt like a very firm foundation, something that was so sure and so true for you. And my challenge as we wrap this study up is that we don't leave those bricks laying on the ground, but that we create them into a new structure that is meaningful, one that we're building back with the people that helped us tear it down, right? That we're allowing other people to speak into the things that we are building back, and all of your rich experiences are creating something really new, and that we don't just sit in the sadness of what was lost, but we really discover something beautiful. And it may look different for all of us, but it will mimic our experiences, everyone in this space. So I'm really thankful that we got to do this with you guys. Thank you for making a commitment to be here. Thank you for reading and listening to the MECDA's work, and really, really grateful. Morgan, what else do you want to share before we close out the Zoom?
Well, I was going to share just briefly with Elizabeth, just sensing your struggle and what you've shared, and just want you to know that just collectively right here, you have a community who sees your pain. And, we just want to let you know that we'll continue to be praying for you and for that journey and for transition and just all the things. So just don't want you to feel alone in that, because, as this community right here, we recognize that for you.
Thank you so much. It's been a long road to get to this point, and I am like, I've already started that grieving process, of what this transition is going to look like. And I think that's why when I saw this book study kind of come up, I just felt like I needed to join with other people that were in that conversation. So thank you so much for saying that. And I really appreciate all of you, and just I can feel that support. So thank you very much.
Well, stay connected with us.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, please stay connected with us, and we can take calls in the morning so that it's the night at your time. You know, we can totally flip-flop this. So we have easy ways to get on our calendar. So please do stay connected.
Thank you.
Sarah, thank you for being here. Sherry, thank you for being such a longtime supporter of Abby and of the work, and for just everyone just being such a hungry learner. I'm leaving this feeling so encouraged, and knowing that the future is always, the tides always rise, and so I'm encouraged by that. So, all right, Morgan, any closing words too?
Not really. Just thank you guys so much for being here. I'm just really encouraged by the conversations. We've kind of gone back and forth about book club and if people really want to be talking about these things. And I think the truth is that it's a small group that wants to be challenged in this way. It's not going to have mass appeal. But I just always walk away from our conversations feeling encouraged and feeling like I'm not alone. And I think Elizabeth, hearing you share too, it can be so isolating. And so yeah, I just want to thank you guys for being here, being a part. And I think we're gonna send out an email with a little poll about next book club. So please interact with our poll so that we can actually know what the group would want to do and wants to talk about. So yeah, just thanks for being here.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, y'all have a good night and a good day.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks.